Blue lights were washing across the cedar walls of my lake cabin when Karen Vale marched up the porch steps and pointed at the brass key in my hand. She was an HOA board member from the subdivision across the water, but she spoke to the deputies as if she owned my front door. "That key was stolen from our maintenance office," she said. "He's breaking into HOA property. I had just unlocked the cabin my grandfather built 42 years earlier. My truck was parked beside the woodpile. My family photographs were still inside, and Karen had brought 2 officers to remove me from my own porch." I didn't argue. I placed the key on the railing, opened the deed folder from behind my seat, and noticed something strange on the HOA map Karen had given them. My cabin wasn't merely mislabeled. Someone had redrawn the shoreline parcel, assigned it an HOA lot number, and begun renting it to residents. Karen expected the deputies to take my key. Instead, that key became the first link in a paper trail she had never expected me to follow. The older deputy examined my driver's license, then compared the name to the deed. He did not pretend that settled the boundary. He photographed the brass key, Karen's bright red tag, the replaced front deadbolt, and the map, before explaining that disputed ownership belonged in civil court. Unless someone became violent, nobody was being arrested that morning. Karen folded her arms beneath her red rain jacket. "You're letting a trespasser stay. We're documenting what's here," the deputy replied. That answer infuriated her more than an argument would have. She warned me not to disturb association property, then followed the deputies down the gravel trail, her heels sinking into the damp pine needles. When the patrol cars disappeared, I tried my key in the front door. It would not turn. The cylinder was new, but the old side door lock still accepted the worn brass teeth my grandfather had used for decades. Inside, the cabin smelled wrong, lemon cleaner instead of cedar smoke. The chairs had been rearranged, commercial white towels sat beside the fireplace, and a plastic information card welcomed guests to something called North Cove Cabin. Then, I found a cleaning checklist on the kitchen counter. 12 dates were marked complete. At the bottom, beneath the HOA logo, was Karen Vale's signature. I left the checklist where it was and photographed every page before touching anything else. Then I walked the cabin room by room, making an inventory the way I would inspect a cabinet job before repairing it. 2 dining chairs had fresh scratches. A framed photograph of my grandparents had been moved from the mantel to a bedroom shelf. In the bathroom, hotel-sized soap bars filled a wire basket I had never seen before. The changes were small enough that a stranger might have called them harmless. To me, they meant people had been sleeping in a place my family had never offered for rent. My grandfather, Samuel Warren, built the cabin 42 years earlier on 3.2 acres along the western edge of Stillwater Lake. The parcel was narrow at the shoreline and widened uphill through cedar and pine. An iron pin near the water marked one corner. From there, the deed line ran toward an old cedar above the access trail, then west around the cabin and woodpile. Cedar Hollow Shores came later. Its streets curved around the northern and eastern sides of the cove, and its homes looked across the water toward our porch. The subdivision had a marina, a picnic lawn, and walking paths, but its recorded property had always stopped before my grandfather's trail. I knew those lines because he had shown them to me long before I understood why they mattered. He would tap the iron pin with his boot and tell me that fences could rot and signs could disappear, but a man should know what his deed described. During the last 18 months of his life, the cabin sat quiet while I cared for him in town. After he died, the property passed to me through his estate. I kept the taxes current, checked the roof after storms, and assumed an empty cabin would remain empty. Standing in that altered kitchen, I realized how much activity I had missed. Tire impressions crossed the soft ground beside the woodpile. A laminated checkout sheet instructed guests to place used towels in a blue bin. A card offered emergency contact information for Cedar Hollow Shores. None of it had been there during my previous visit. Someone had also driven two small numbered signs into the trail, directing visitors from the HOA road toward my parking area. Their paint was still bright, and the disturbed soil around the posts had not settled. Before noon, Karen emailed me a formal notice. She addressed it to unauthorized occupant and ordered me to surrender every cabin key within 24 hours. The notice threatened fines for interfering with an association amenity, although I had never joined Cedar Hollow Shores and owned no lot inside it. Her only attachment was the glossy recreation map the deputies had photographed. I drove home with the brass key, the deed folder, and copies of everything I had found. In my grandfather's metal records box, beneath years of paid property tax receipts, I discovered a faded cabin inventory sheet. It listed the stove, bunks, hand tools, and 3 original keys. Beside each key was the same 4-digit code stamped into mine. The sheet was dated 11 years before Cedar Hollow Shores was developed. That should have made Karen's accusation impossible. But when I enlarged the map attached to her notice, I saw a smaller date printed near the legend. The HOA version showing my cabin as Lot R14 had been revised only 6 weeks earlier. The revision date gave me a place to start, but it did not prove who owned the land. The next morning, I went to the county recorder's office and requested certified copies of every instrument tied to my parcel and the Cedar Hollow Shores subdivision. The clerk brought out my grandfather's deed, the probate transfer into my name, and the subdivision plat recorded when the development was created. She placed the documents beneath a glass weight and let me compare them. My deed described the 3.2 acres through distances, bearings, and physical monuments. The HOA's plat showed its marina and recreation lawn, but the western common property line stopped east of the old access trail. Warren Cabin did not appear inside that boundary. It existed only on the glossy amenity map Karen had attached to her notice. "Is this map recorded anywhere?" I asked. The clerk searched by document number, developer name, and association name. Nothing matched it. She explained that tax and GIS maps could help locate records, but neither could rewrite a deed or create ownership. I ordered certified copies and called Maya Torres, a licensed surveyor recommended by the attorney who had handled my grandfather's estate. Maya met me at the cabin 2 days later with a field tablet, measuring equipment, and none of Karen's certainty. She read the deed before making a single claim about the ground. We found the shoreline iron pin beneath several inches of leaf litter and packed soil. Its age and position fit the recorded description. Uphill, near the cedar my grandfather used to point out, Maya uncovered the damaged top of another monument. She photographed both in place, recorded measurements, and tied them to additional control points beyond the parcel. By late afternoon, her preliminary work placed the cabin, porch, woodpile, parking area, and both trail signs within my deed lines. The nearest HOA common parcel ended on the opposite side of the access trail. Maya was careful about what that meant. Her survey could locate the recorded description and document the monuments, but it could not prevent the HOA from disputing the legal effect of those records. A judge, not a surveyor or deputy, would resolve a contested ownership claim. I photographed the monuments after Maya finished and avoided moving the numbered signs. We preserved the site exactly as we found it. That evening, I met attorney Rachel Kim. She reviewed the certified deed, probate transfer, recorded HOA plat, inventory sheet, police report, photographs, and Maya's preliminary field notes. The documents supported my ownership, but Rachel wanted the entire chain secured before anyone accused me of hiding evidence or interfering with HOA operations. She advised me not to remove the new deadbolt or throw away any HOA materials. Even unauthorized hardware could become evidence of who entered the property and when. Maya would finish a signed survey after checking her field measurements against the recorded bearings, while Rachel ordered a title report to confirm that no later conveyance, easement, or reservation affected the cabin. She sent Cedar Hollow Shores 2 letters. The first demanded preservation of map drafts, rental records, emails, invoices, key logs, and meeting minutes. The second directed the association to stop entering, advertising, renting, cleaning, or altering Warren Cabin while the title review and survey were completed. The HOA had 5 business days to respond. It did not wait 5 days. The following afternoon, a silver SUV rolled down the trail while I was photographing the new front lock. A couple stepped out with 2 children, grocery bags, and a printed reservation confirmation. The father smiled, held up a red-tagged key, and told me they had rented North Cove Cabin for the weekend through Cedar Hollow Shores. The family's excitement disappeared when I explained that the cabin was privately owned and the reservation should never have been sold. I showed them my identification and Rachel's cease and desist letter, but I did not ask for their personal information or blame them for believing the HOA. The father, Mark Ellis, called the number on his confirmation. Karen answered. I could hear her voice through the speaker telling him that I was an outside claimant, interfering with a valid community booking. She instructed the family to use the red key and enter anyway. Mark looked at the cabin, then at his children. We're not walking into somebody else's property dispute. With his permission, I photographed the reservation confirmation and red key tag. He forwarded the booking email to Rachel before loading the groceries back into the SUV. They had paid $1,200 for the weekend, including a cleaning fee collected by Cedar Hollow Shores. Karen emailed me 20 minutes later. She accused me of harassing residents and assessed $2,000 in fines for disrupting an HOA amenity. Rachel answered with one sentence. Caleb Warren was not an association member, and the HOA had no contractual basis to fine him. We checked the reservation portal before it disappeared. Cached pages showed 12 completed or scheduled bookings under North Cove Cabin. The listing used photographs of my grandfather's porch, fireplace, and shoreline. One image even showed his canoe pulled beside the woodpile. I installed 2 cameras on my property, one facing the porch and another covering the access trail. Both were positioned to avoid neighboring homes and public areas. 3 mornings later, the trail camera recorded an HOA maintenance truck entering after sunrise. A worker carried a toolbox to the front door, tested the new deadbolt, and left a small package on the porch. I did not confront him. I saved the original footage, made a working copy for Rachel, and photographed the unopened package. It contained another lock cylinder and 4 red-tagged keys. That afternoon, Karen sent a message to every Cedar Hollow Shores resident. She claimed an individual with no community ties was attempting to seize a long-established recreation property. She warned residents not to communicate with me and promised that the board would defend their amenities. Her message worked on some people. Cars slowed beside the trail. One resident photographed me from the HOA road. Another shouted that I had ruined his anniversary reservation. The practical damage was no longer limited to a lock or scratched furniture. Karen had turned my presence on my own land into a public threat. When Maya returned to verify her measurements, we discovered that one wooden witness stake had been pulled out and tossed behind the woodpile. The iron monument beneath it remained untouched, and her original field data preserved its position. She replaced only the wooden marker after photographing the disturbance. The stronger break came from Owen Pike, the locksmith whose company name appeared on the unopened package. He called Rachel after receiving the preservation letter. Owen said Karen had hired him to replace the front deadbolt and provide HOA-tagged keys. She described the building as a recently recovered association property and gave him a map showing Lot R14. Owen had kept the work order, invoice, emails, and original lock cylinder. He was willing to preserve them and provide a statement. His records also explained why my old key still opened the side door. Karen had authorized work only on the front entrance to keep the first invoice below her committee's discretionary spending limit. I hired a restoration contractor to inspect the cabin. He documented gouged flooring, damaged chairs, missing cookware, stained bedding, and screw damage around the front door. Combined with cleaning, lock restoration, and replacement of personal items, the preliminary repair estimate reached $6,800. Then Rachel compared Owen's invoice with Karen's map history. Both carried the same date, the Monday 6 weeks earlier when Karen had revised the amenity map to label my cabin Lot R14. The matching dates changed the case from a disagreement over an old map into a documented sequence of decisions. Rachel completed the title review first. It found no deed, easement, reservation, lease, or recorded transfer giving Cedar Hollow Shores any right to Warren Cabin. Maya's signed survey reached the same physical conclusion as her fieldwork. All improvements and both original monuments fell within my 3.2-acre parcel. When the HOA refused to suspend the rental program voluntarily, Rachel filed a civil action seeking a declaration of title, an accounting of the rental income, damages, and an injunction against further entry. We did not ask the court to decide the entire case overnight. We asked for temporary restrictions that would preserve the cabin while both sides exchanged evidence. The HOA's attorney responded with a brochure printed by the original subdivision developer. It showed a sketch of the lake, marina, trails, and a small building labeled Future Retreat Cabin. According to the HOA, that image proved the developer intended Warren Cabin to serve the community. Rachel pointed out the problem. The brochure did not identify my grandfather's parcel, contain a legal description, or transfer ownership. It was marketing material. The recorded subdivision plat, filed by the same developer, stopped before our access trail. At the temporary hearing, the judge did not make a final title ruling. She ordered Cedar Hollow Shores to stop renting, entering, cleaning, advertising, or changing locks at the cabin until the claim could be resolved. I was allowed to secure and maintain the property, but instructed to preserve the disputed hardware and HOA materials. That order finally emptied the trail. It also opened discovery. The association produced map drafts, committee minutes, invoices, reservation ledgers, and internal emails. The records showed that Karen had proposed the cabin rental program after the recreation budget developed a shortfall. She estimated that weekend rentals could produce more than $30,000 during the first year. Her first presentation to the board described Warren Cabin as an underused legacy amenity. No title report was attached. The meeting minutes stated that Karen would verify ownership before money was spent. 2 weeks later, the HOA property manager, Elaine Brooks, emailed Karen after failing to locate the cabin on the recorded plat. Elaine wrote that county records appeared to place the structure on a separately taxed Warren parcel. She recommended delaying the program until an attorney completed a title search. Karen's reply was 6 sentences long. The sentence Rachel highlighted read, "It has always looked like part of this community, and waiting for perfect paperwork will cost us the summer season." 3 days after that email, Karen revised the amenity map. The following Monday, she authorized Owen's lock work. She then reported to the board that access had been secured and reservations could begin. Several board members reacted badly when they saw the full exchange. Karen had told them the ownership question was resolved, not that a warning remained unanswered. One member provided Rachel with notes showing he had asked for a deed number during the meeting and received none. The financial records established 12 reservations, 9 completed stays, and 3 future bookings. The HOA had collected $14,400 in rent, cleaning charges, and recreation fees. Some of that money had been spent on linens, key tags, online advertising, and maintenance. The remaining funds sat in the recreation account. Karen did not deny writing the emails or changing the map. Through the HOA's attorney, she argued that she had relied on the developer brochure, years of community assumptions, and the cabin's visible proximity to HOA facilities. She also suggested that the property appeared abandoned because it had been used infrequently. None of those facts conveyed title, but they explained her motive. Karen had promised residents a new amenity, expected the rental income to repair her budget, and treated documentary uncertainty as an obstacle she could solve with a map label and a new lock. The judge referred the parties to mediation after the core records had been exchanged. On the evening before it began, Rachel arranged our evidence in sequence: the deed, recorded plat, certified survey, inventory sheet, tax records, lock invoice, warning email, rental ledger, and repair estimate. Last, she sealed my brass key and Karen's red-tagged key in separate evidence bags and placed them beside the two competing maps. Mediation began at the courthouse 14 weeks after Karen called the deputies. Cedar Hollow Shores arrived with its attorney, board president, treasurer, insurance representative, and Karen. Rachel sat beside me with 3 binders and the 2 evidence bags. The mediator said he would test each side's risks and determine whether a binding settlement was possible. If it failed, the temporary restrictions would remain as the case moved toward trial. The HOA presented its best argument first. The developer brochure advertised a future retreat cabin. Residents had long assumed Warren Cabin belonged to the recreation area, and Karen claimed she believed she was activating a neglected amenity. Rachel began with my grandfather's recorded deed and the probate transfer into my name. She followed with the HOA's own recorded plat, which ended east of the access trail. The brochure showed an intention to build some future cabin. It did not identify, purchase, or convey the building Samuel Warren already owned. Maya joined by video and explained her certified survey. She described the recovered iron pin, the second monument near the cedar, the recorded bearings, and the additional control points used to verify her measurements. Every relevant improvement stood within my parcel. She did not claim that her survey created title. It located the land described by the title records already before us. Next came the keys. My worn brass key carried the same 4-digit code listed on the inventory sheet, 11 years before Cedar Hollow Shores existed. The red-tagged key opened the deadbolt Owen installed weeks before the rental launch. His preserved cylinder, work order, invoice, and emails established who requested the change and when. Karen leaned forward. I was trying to protect what we believed was community property. Rachel did not argue with the word believed. She opened the discovery binder to Elaine Brooks's warning email and placed Karen's reply beside it. Belief might explain Karen's first question. It did not explain why she revised the map, ordered a lock, and accepted reservations after the property manager identified a separately taxed Warren parcel and recommended a title search. The rental ledger supplied the measurable part of the harm. Cedar Hollow Shores had collected $14,400 through 9 completed stays and 3 scheduled bookings. The repair estimate added $6,800 for locks, flooring, furniture, linens, cookware, cleaning, and damaged trim. Survey and title expenses totaled $4,200 before litigation costs. The HOA attorney tried a narrower position. Even if title favored me, he argued, the association had acted under a long-standing assumption and should be allowed limited access while the parties corrected the records. I could not accept that. Limited access would preserve the same uncertainty that brought police to my porch. I wanted a recorded end to the claim, not another map note that a later committee could reinterpret. In private session, the mediator explained that no trial outcome was guaranteed. But the HOA had no recorded conveyance. Its own plat excluded the parcel, and the warning email made continued rentals difficult to characterize as an innocent clerical error. It also risked an injunction, an accounting of revenue, restoration damages, and additional expense. For us, trial meant more months of restricted use, expert costs, and attorney fees that might not be recoverable. Rachel recommended negotiating from the strength of our record without treating every requested dollar as automatic. The board president and treasurer asked to meet separately from Karen. When they returned, the president acknowledged that most directors had approved a rental concept based on Karen's statement that ownership had been cleared. They had never seen Elaine's warning or a deed supporting the program. The final agreement took hours to draft. Cedar Hollow Shores would recognize my title and file a recorded disclaimer of any interest in the entire 3.2-acre parcel. A consent judgment would permanently prohibit the association, its committees, contractors, and residents from entering, renting, advertising, changing locks, or representing Warren Cabin as an HOA amenity without my written permission. The HOA would remove Lot R14 from every map and reservation system, refund the 3 future bookings, and restore the original hardware and damaged interior. It would pay $48,600, $14,400 in rental proceeds, $6,800 for restoration, $4,200 for survey and title work, and $23,200 in negotiated litigation expenses and settlement consideration. I agreed, because every dollar had a documented purpose, and every future restriction could be enforced. The remedy returned the cabin, the money earned from it, and the cost of correcting what the HOA had done. When the signatures were complete, Karen removed the red-tagged key from her folder. She placed it on the table between the 2 maps and pushed it toward the board president without looking at me. It was the same key she had expected the deputies to use against me. Now it marked the end of the HOA's access to my door. The consent judgment was entered 12 days later. Cedar Hollow Shores filed its disclaimer with the county recorder, identifying the full 3.2-acre parcel and stating that the association claimed no ownership, easement, rental right, or access interest in it. Rachel sent me the stamped copy. Lot R14 disappeared from the HOA map. The reservation page went offline, the numbered trail signs were removed, and the recreation guide was corrected. All 3 families with future bookings received refunds. The association also notified the 9 previous renters that Warren Cabin had never been an HOA-owned facility. Owen returned with the original front door cylinder he had preserved. Under the restoration agreement, he repaired the screw holes, reinstalled the old hardware, and handed every red-tagged key to the board president for destruction. A contractor refinished the damaged floor, repaired the dining chairs, replaced the missing cookware, and cleaned the cabin without rearranging what remained. I used part of the settlement to reinforce the porch and protect my grandfather's photographs in archival frames. The money mattered because it paid for real losses, but the recorded disclaimer mattered more. It meant no future committee could revive Karen's claim by printing another colorful map. Cedar Hollow Shores removed Karen from the Recreation Committee before the repairs were finished. A month later, she resigned from the board. I never learned whether she regretted calling the police, changing the lock, or ignoring Elaine's warning. By then, her private feelings were no longer necessary to protect my property. The red key tag from the mediation remained sealed with the case records in Rachel's office. I did not want it hanging inside the cabin like a trophy. The object that belonged there was the worn brass key my grandfather had carried for decades. On the first quiet evening after the work was completed, I returned alone. The lake was flat, and the last sunlight rested on the cedar walls without blue patrol lights cutting through it. I followed the old trail past the iron pin and the tree my grandfather had shown me as a boy. At the door, I placed the brass key into the restored lock. It turned with the same slight resistance I remembered. The mechanism clicked, solid and familiar. Karen had called the police because she believed possession of a newer key gave her authority over my cabin. In the end, neither key decided ownership. The deed established the right, the survey located it, and the records proved what had happened. I hung my grandfather's key on its wooden hook beside the door and stepped inside.